Deny yourself, the radical psychology of ego death in Jesus' teachings. Matthew 16:24-25. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. What did Jesus truly mean when he spoke these words to his disciples on the road to Caesarea Philippi? For 2,000 years, many have interpreted deny yourself as a call to self-punishment, repression, or the rejection of all earthly pleasure. But when we examine these teachings through the lens of ancient Jewish mysticism, the wisdom of the Hebrew prophets, and the spiritual traditions that surrounded Jesus, we discover something far more profound and revolutionary. This was not about self-hatred or ascetic deprivation. This was about the most radical psychological transformation imaginable, the death of the false self so that the true self, the divine image within us, could be born. To understand what Jesus meant by deny yourself, we must first understand what the ancients meant by the self that needed to be denied. In Hebrew thought, there were always two aspects of human nature in tension with each other. The prophet Jeremiah wrote, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it?" Jeremiah 17:9. This wasn't a condemnation of the heart itself, but recognition of how our inner life becomes corrupted by what we might today call the ego, the constructed identity built from fear, pride, social conditioning, and attachment to temporal things. The Hebrew mystical tradition speaks of bitul hayesh, total self-negation, where the ego, all and any forms of selfhood, must be nullified in the consciousness of divine omnipresence. This concept predates Jesus and shows us that the Jewish spiritual tradition already understood the need to transcend the false self. Even earlier, King David captured this in Psalm 131. "O Lord, my heart is not lifted up, my eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother." Here we see the ego, the part that lifts itself up, that grasps for greatness, being quieted so the soul can rest in God. The ancient Israelites understood that there was the nephesh, the animal soul driven by desire and survival, and the neshama, the divine breath that connects us to the eternal. The goal of spiritual life was not to destroy the nephesh, but to let the neshama rule. When Jesus said, "Take up your cross," his listeners would not have immediately thought of his own crucifixion. That hadn't happened yet. The cross was already a powerful symbol throughout the ancient world, representing the intersection of the horizontal, earthly, temporal, with the vertical, heavenly, eternal. To take up your cross meant to willingly choose the death of everything in you that was merely horizontal. The ego's endless grasping for status, security, and satisfaction in temporal things, so that the vertical dimension, your connection with the divine, could become your true life. The Apostle Paul, deeply schooled in Jewish mysticism, understood this perfectly. "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." Galatians 2:20. This wasn't metaphorical language. Paul was describing a real psychological death and resurrection. In the ancient Jewish tradition, this was understood as tzaddik, the process of becoming righteous not through moral effort alone, but through alignment with divine nature. The Talmud teaches, "In the place where penitents stand, even the completely righteous cannot stand." Berakot 34b. Why? Because the penitent has experienced the death of the old self and the birth of the new, something the merely moral person has never undergone. The cross, then, represents what the mystics called the narrow gate, the point where the ego must die for the soul to be born into eternal life. Jesus' teaching about ego death wasn't isolated. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls changed the way modern scholars view Judaism in the time of Jesus, revealing a rich tradition of mystical understanding that surrounded his ministry. The Dead Sea Scrolls, copied around the time of Christ, were likely created by the Essenes, who lived outside Jerusalem in a community alongside the Dead Sea. These scrolls speak repeatedly of the battle between the spirit of truth and the spirit of deception, language that Jesus himself would use. In the community rule from Qumran, we read, "He created man to govern the world, and has appointed for him 2 spirits in which to walk until the time of his visitation." The scroll continues to describe how the spirit of truth leads to healing, great peace in a long life, fruitfulness, together with every everlasting blessing and eternal joy in life without end, a crown of glory and a garment of majesty in unending light. This parallels Jesus' teaching perfectly. There are 2 ways to live, from the false self, spirit of deception, or the true self, spirit of truth. But this wisdom extended beyond Jewish thought. In the Hindu Upanishads, written centuries before Christ, we find this teaching. When all desires that dwell in the heart are cast away, then the mortal becomes immortal. Katha Upanishad 2.3.14. What appears to be mysticism refers to the attainment of insight into ultimate or hidden truths, including the realization of emptiness and egolessness. The Greek philosopher Plotinus, though writing after Jesus, captured the universal nature of this truth. You must close the eyes and call instead upon another vision which is to be woken within you. This other vision could only emerge when the ego's constant chatter was silenced. Long before Jesus walked in Galilee, the Hebrew prophets had called for this same inner transformation. Jeremiah proclaimed God's promise, "I will give them a heart to know that I am the Lord." Jeremiah 24.7. But first, there had to be what Jeremiah called the circumcision of the heart, the cutting away of the hardened ego that prevents us from knowing God. Ezekiel prophesied, "I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." Ezekiel 36:26. The heart of stone is the ego, hard, defensive, separate. The heart of flesh is tender, open, capable of true communion with the divine and with others. Even Moses understood this principle. After receiving the law, he told the people, "The Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, so that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live." Deuteronomy 36. So what does this look like practically? How do we deny ourselves in the way Jesus intended? First, we must understand that this is not about denying our humanity, our gifts, or our legitimate needs. Jesus ate with sinners, attended weddings, and expressed the full range of human emotions. The self we're called to deny is the false self, the ego that insists we are separate from God and from each other. Every time you choose forgiveness over resentment, you practice ego death. The ego wants to nurse its wounds and prove its righteousness. But when you forgive, you're saying, "I am not ultimately defined by what was done to me. My identity is deeper than my hurt." Every time you choose service over self-promotion, you practice ego death. The ego constantly asks, "What's in it for me?" But service says, "I am not the center of the universe. I find my life by giving it away." Every time you choose presence over control, you practice ego death. The ego lives in fear of the future and regret about the past. But presence says, "This moment right now is where God meets me. I don't need to control tomorrow to be whole today." The early Christian monks understood this profoundly. John Cassian wrote, "The beginning of our salvation is the fear of the Lord, but the consummation is reached when the heart is cleansed of all evil thoughts and when we are able to see the pure glory of God." This cleansing is the ongoing practice of ego death. But Jesus didn't stop with deny yourself and take up your cross. He promised, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. This is the promise of resurrection life, not just after physical death, but right here, right now. When the ego dies, what rises in its place is what Paul called Christ in you, the hope of glory. Colossians 1:27. This isn't a loss of personality or individuality. It's the discovery of your truest self, the self that exists in union with God. The mystics of every tradition have testified to this. When the false self dies, what emerges is more beautiful, more creative, more loving, and more authentic than anything the ego could produce. This is what Jesus meant when he said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. John 10:10. So when Jesus said, deny yourself, he wasn't issuing a call to self-punishment or repression. He was offering the most radical invitation possible, the invitation to discover who you really are beneath all the layers of fear, conditioning, and false identity. The ancient Jewish mystics knew this secret. The DeadSeaScrolls, found in caves about 1.5 kilometers west of the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, preserve this wisdom for us. The Hindu sages taught it, the Christian saints lived it, and Jesus embodied it perfectly. The path is still open, the invitation still stands. Lose the life you think you are and discover the life you really are, the life that is hidden with Christ in God, the life that death cannot touch, the life that is your truest identity. This is the radical psychology of ego death. This is the narrow gate that leads to abundant life. This is what it means to deny yourself and follow Jesus, not into diminishment, but into the fullness of who God created you to be.